In a week or two, I'll have a wrap-up video to share some statistics about the top 210 books that I ranked last month, and I'll also share a link listing all of the books on a spreadsheet that you can use as a quick and easy resource. Be sure to be subscribed with notifications enabled so you don't miss that one. Hi, I'm Michael Everts, and this is Fit to be Read. That recent top 210 science fiction books video also inspired this book haul and TBR. Let me tell you how. First up is Little Brother by Cory Doctorow, published in 2008. Cory Doctorow, who wrote this blurb for this book, Neuromancer, appeared recently on my top 210 science fiction books video and talked about Neuromancer and his blurb. This, of course, prompted me to focus in more on the work of Cory Doctorow, and I ordered Little Brother. While this is considered a young adult novel, it does get pushback on that label because of clear, heavy adult themes, especially those of sex, torture, and fear, and social activism. In Little Brother, the 17-year-old protagonist Marcus cuts school with his friend Daryl. This happens to coincide with the terrorist attack in San Francisco. I believe the terrorists bombed the Bay Bridge and the metro system. Homeland Security gets involved, and so do attacks on civil liberties. I see where this is going, and I'm eager to check it out and possibly add it to an eventual TBR for my kids as well. I actually had my 13-year-old Paolo start reading this, and he's giving it pretty good reviews so far. That Marcus is also a hacker and a subversive who creates his own tech devices and secret communications network makes me even more curious. Earth Abides by George R. Stewart, published in 1949. This one keeps us in California, as this is set in Berkeley, and this time, however, everybody's dead. Almost everybody. This is an apocalyptic situation. Almost everyone has died from a nasty disease. Because main character Isherwood Williams was up in the mountains working on his graduate thesis and suffering from a different unfortunate event, he eventually emerges to discover the catastrophe. I'm a huge fan of Stephen King's The Stand, Pat Frank's Alas Babylon, and Walter M. Miller's A Canticle for Leibowitz, and I have high expectations for this to be a similar experience. I also picked up Cat Rambo's You Sexy Thing, published in 2021. Cat Rambo is another author who appeared on a few of my episodes, including my giant top 210 list video. I interviewed Rambo earlier this year and we spoke about science fiction, her work and influences, and for my top 210 list and the top 210 preview video, she discussed Stanislaw Lem's The Siberiad and Anthony Burgess's classic, A Clockwork Orange. I'm excited to go into You Sexy Thing, somewhat blind. This is a relatively new space opera release, and I already know to expect a few things that I generally like: well-formed non-human characters and a sentient spaceship. This one looks fun. It still has some of these annotation tabs in there. This is The Wanting Seed by Anthony Burgess, published in 1962. Following the top 210 episode, I joined Steve Donahue on his channel to talk about some of the books that were on it and some of the books that were not. Anthony Burgess came up briefly and acknowledging that A Clockwork Orange, a book that I rated highly, is the only book of his that I've read. It prompted me to pick this up to continue my Burgess journey. In The Wanting Seed, the idea that homosexuality is promoted because the world is overpopulated also piques my interest. Major themes in The Wanting Seed revolve around this overpopulation and the declining world, and how society deals with it or reacts to it. Developing such a large list, ranking 210 of the approximate 550 science fiction books that I've read, definitely reveals or reminds me of gaps in my science fiction reading. By gaps, I suggest there are significant popular novels and authors that I have not read, and it almost feels like a dereliction of duty as one who speaks online regularly about classic science fiction literature. The next two books in my haul fit the bill. Having only read Roger Zelazny's short fiction, I'm remedying this gap with his novel, Doorways in the Sand. Published in 1976, Doorways presents the Starstone, a relic given to us from the aliens, or by the aliens, or rather they trade for it. The aliens, they get the Mona Lisa and the crown jewels. As you can imagine from that, there's going to be comedy and satire in this. It's also a detective story because the Starstone disappears. Main character Fred is the supposed thief. Where this book really catches my interest are the measures that everyone goes to find the stone. Everyone from law enforcement, government agents, criminal ne'er-do-wells, and even aliens are after him. On the table are chasing, assaulting, shooting at him, telepathically interrogating him, and even torture. There's also more to the Starstone than it just being an artifact. Reading John Wyndham's The Day of the Trifids, published in 1951, will also fill another gap in my reading of popular classic science fiction lit. I've heard from a few people who list this as their favorite science fiction book, and others who listed among their top 10. Good enough for me. In Trifids, nearly everyone is blinded by a meteor shower. With everyone blind, the world falls apart. Spared from the meteor shower is protagonist Bill Mason, a biologist. During the crisis, his eyes were bandaged because one of the Trifid plants that he was working with got some of its venom in his eyes. Yay for the Trifids, right? No, apparently not. Among the chaos, the Trifids begin attacking humans, and their venomous stings are deadly. My main hesitation with this is that it feels like a War of the Worlds type situation, but with monster plants instead of Martian tripods. I'm hoping it's more War of the Worlds than Little Shop of Horrors or Zombie Pulp. The word for world is forest by Ursula K. Le Guin. After I put up the top 210 video, not surprisingly, I remembered a few books that I left off simply because I forgot about them. This was one of those books. This definitely should have been on there. This was one of my first experiences reading Le Guin decades ago. It's also the Le Guin novel that feels, or novella, that feels like the experience of reading her other more popular works, The Left Hand of Darkness and The Dispossessed. There's a lot in this little novella worth talking about. From one angle is humans having mostly exhausted the resources of their world and then heading to another world to basically pillage that one, especially lumber from that other place, with no regard for the inhabitants of that world. From the perspective of these inhabitants, they are dehumanized and confronted with the violent colonists. Their environment and way of life are threatened. They are attacked and enslaved. Interesting about the native Ascians is their connection to a type of lucid dreaming, which sort of recalls another great Le Guin novel, The Lathe of Heaven. I picked up Borne by Jeff Vandermeer, published in 2017. Vandermeer's name was coming up a lot since the top 210 video, and while I was expecting the recommended read would be his novel Annihilation, the one that I was told to start with was Borne. I asked someone on another forum as well, and they also vouched for Borne, so Borne it is. I'm going to read this for its reputation as an imaginative and weird, in a good way, reading experience. I'm also reading this for its post-apocalyptic biotech, biopunk themes, and of course to try out a new-to-me author. I also now have Supernova Era by Xi Chin Liu and Baoshu's The Redemption of Time. Because I love Xi Chin Liu's Remembrance of Earth Past series so much, and you can see all 3 books of that initial series celebrated on my top 210, I wanted to read more Xi Chin and try something independent of that series, and I picked up the Supernova Era. In this story, a supernova explodes, and the radiation only mortally affects Earth's adults. Everybody under 13 is okay for some reason. In The Redemption of Time, written by Baoshu, that takes place in the same universe as The Three-Body Problem and its sequels, so that one was a no-brainer. Though it was only last year that I read the Remembrance of Earth Past series, I'm assuming that I'm going to need to reread that before trying this Baoshu entry. I'm assuming that, and that is The Three-Body Problem, The Dark Forest, and Death's End. So much happened in Death's End that I can't imagine going into this without a reread. If you've read this one and you can shed some light, please share in the comments section for me and let me know, do I need to read all 3 books again? Can I just skim over them and then go to this? Let me know. For those unfamiliar, the Remembrance of Earth's Past series is, among other things, first contact science fiction. Baoshu's The Redemption of Time looks at the aftermath of the conflict between humans and the alien Trisolarans, but again, how much of the events of Death's End are relevant versus is this just local to the Earth and what's going on there and the immediate universe? For a different kind of haul, these 2 books are not new pickups. I was cleaning out some storage and I found these. These have been packed away for at least a couple of decades. We've got Foundation's Fear by Gregory Benford and Gold from Isaac Asimov. After Asimov's death, the Asimov family permitted 3 renowned science fiction authors, Greg Benford, Greg Bear, and David Brin, the killer bees of sci-fi, to pen a new Foundation trilogy. Benford was actually the only one of that trio that didn't appear on my top 210 episode, unfortunately. His novel, Foundation's Fear, is the first book in the permitted extended series and adds more context to the front end of the events of Asimov's original trilogy. Gold, published in 1995, is a compilation of several of Asimov's short stories and many of his essays on science fiction. While I'd recommend all of Asimov's short fiction, the standouts from this book for me are Hallucination, Cal, The Instability, and of course Gold. And among the essays not to miss are a very short 1984 essay on time travel, the essay Psychohistory, and the 1981 essay The Influence of Science Fiction. There was one other thing in the storage as well, and I forgot about this for at least 20 years, and this is a screenplay that I wrote way back in, I think, 1996. And, you know, I actually did a course in screenwriting and put this thing together. And it's laminated. It's all nice. And so I'm going to read through that. I don't even remember it that much. But it's called Strings. And it's sort of like the movie Billy Elliot. Although I did write this, I think, before that movie came out. So no plagiarism there. I don't plan on doing anything with it, but it has inspired me to think about writing again, and I do want to write a novel, so that's something that I'm going to be working on. I have a really good idea for a science fiction novel that I would love to read, so maybe I'll try to write that. Thank you for watching. I'm Michael Everts, and this is Fit to be Read.